Okay, from the Buddhist understanding, the entire our consciousness is divided into. There are many different ways to look at, but one way to look at is perception and conception. And the perceptions are direct, but they do not have the power to make judgment, to judge. Conceptual minds are indirect to their objects, but they have an ability to make judgment. Not just the judgment, for example, our thoughts, all these are conceptual minds. The perception minds do not have the ability to make judgment. So the difference is this. Conceptual minds to operate is a very much, there's always, whether it's right or wrong, there's always thinking process. Perception minds, they do not have thinking process. And sense consciousnesses, according to the Buddhist psychology texts, sense consciousnesses are always perception, never being conception. Now, this is, again, it has this Buddhist understanding about the conscious, and the Western psychologists or the Western scientists they use, or the brain, the neurologists, or they use conscious and unconscious. There's some differences. There are some differences. From the Buddhist understanding, there's a perfectly possibility. There's possibility. There are occasions we are not conscious at all. For instance, it has some similarity with when you say, for instance, when you are in a yearning, very strong yearning, long yearning. Buddhist understanding that time, there's a possibility completely out of conscious. Buddhist person, from the Buddhist psychology texts, consciousness is an event. An event. It is not a static. It is not a some sort of thing. Consciousness is an event which cognize the object. Not necessarily cognize the object correctly, rightly, but it is an event. It is not a thing. It is not a some kind of static. It is an event which cognize its object. Thoughts, memories, craving, clinging, thinking, all these are conceptual minds. When you use this statement, when I think as a me, there are so many things there. It is not just a conceptual mind. There are so many, the culture, so many other things are involved. But the feeling is who I am. That feeling, that is conceptual mind. You're right. But to feel it, then there are so many other things are involved. It is not just the conceptual mind is there. Therefore, you feel who I am. There isn't a deconceptual mind. Then it goes to many different things. Okay. Memory, thought, desire, all these, the craving, like or dislike, all this making judgment, the thinking, yearning, longing, all these are conceptual mind, not the perception. Then, as I said earlier, there are so many things involved. Why you feel, who I am. And the Buddhist understanding is this. There isn't within yourself, within me, there isn't some kind of entity or some kind of nature, some kind of, a thing within ourselves, I or me or self. Therefore, you feel who I am, therefore I feel who I am. That's not the Buddhist understanding. While we feel, in this case, in my case, I am Tashi, why I feel that? Because, here the combination of this mind and body, and on this combination of mind and body, this label, the Tashi, is given. And the mind, my minds, my thoughts, my emotions, social, accept it. This is Tashi. And that's why I feel I am Tashi. I'm man, I'm a monk, I'm Tibetan. Under the basis of there are so many things are here, but there isn't a something, some kind of entity, some kind of nature in here, apart from these building blocks of Tashi. Yeah, I is based on so many different things, mind and body. And then my parents or whoever called me Tashi, and all this come together, I become Tashi. And that's why I have experience of Tashi. I have this conviction of I am Tashi. And if somebody say you are not Tashi, I will argue. But why all people have like this? In order to experience that, we don't have to have. It doesn't need to be. There's some kind of solid, concrete, some kind of independent, entity, something to call something is something. Look at this table in front of us. Being coming to table. This table, you agree, I agree. And you experience, I experience, it is table. We can touch it, we can feel it, we can look at it, we can use it. But coming to being as a table, so many combinations. Including your acceptance as a table, my acceptance as a table, including your language use as a, label this one as a table, my language use as a table. So all this together, then, we can say, this is table, this is chair, this is me. So you and me, everybody, in order to experience, there's a me, there's a table, there's a chair, according to Buddhist understanding. They don't need to be something concrete, solid, independent entity as there are. It is really many things come together, then come to being as a table, chair, me. This term free will has so many different connotations, so many different meanings. It seems, according to the person who's asking that question. For example, free will has a strong connotation according to the Abrahamic religions or the Christianity, what does mean free will. And also it seems the meaning of free will has a different explanation from the modern philosophy, not necessarily related to the Christianity. So in Buddhism, we don't have such a term, say free will, but what we have a view saying you and me, your future and my future, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, next year, next decades. It is open. It is not closed. What's going to happen? Although my today's the thinking and the action have strong impact to my tomorrow, what I'm going to experience, what I'm going to do, what I'm going to have. Because, for example, my right here now, I'm thinking about my lunch. That thought, and when the lunch bell ring, I'll go and eat it. It makes the impacts to 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, how I feel. And so the future, starting just from now, the future until I die, it is open. It is not completely fixed. It is not completely, fixed. It is really open. Even though from my childhood up to now, my actions, my activities, my judgment make some impact. My tomorrow, day after tomorrow's, next year, next decades, how I'm going to live. The consciousness, our way of thinking, our mind, have a tremendous, what's called the power, or the power. If I use the term power, is not really the right word. Has a tremendous influence to, our future. Now this is because according to Buddhist philosophy, there isn't a right and wrong, such as some kind of, regardless of circumstances, regardless of condition. So according to this is very interesting point to people, particularly Westerners, to know, the Buddhist understanding about the things and events, because there's no absolute things and events outside there. Therefore, you can't say there's an absolute right and wrong. Okay, now, take an example as greed. Greed to make you unhappy, it depends on so many other circumstances. Greed itself will not make you unhappy. If your greed start to make you to work too hard to get what you want, then it makes you unhappy. Your greed, out of your greed, if what you wanted to get it, if you start to cause pain and difficulty to others, then it may make you unhappy. You can't say the greed itself is, something that by its own something is bad or wrong. It is how you use it, and it is due to all the impacts. No, I think it is fundamental, natural, or instinct make us to have these things. Still, we don't need it, because our fundamental, natural instinct is we want to be happy. That is, but by itself is nothing wrong. Having that kind of, instinct, that kind of feeling, or that kind of desire, is nothing wrong. You to have that strong feeling, desire, you want to be a very happy person, and me, there's nothing wrong. Why, or the way it started to go wrong, or if I say wrong, I'm not saying wrong in the sense of big mass, but you're taking your example, something we don't need but still we keep, because we, to fulfill that fundamental instinct, we think they will make us different, happier. And that is in other words, starting to go wrong, or why we keep those things, what we don't need. And from the Buddhist understanding, as I put it earlier, while we keep these things, we still don't need it. We always think and feel and expect there's something in those things and events, some kind of, as I put it earlier, some kind of, concrete entity, some kind of independent entity within those things and events, which give us something, what we need. And that is the starting point from Buddhist understanding, why we have grasping. Grasping is more, while we have grasping, we exaggerate. We exaggerate on the things and events more than what they can give us. Just having it is not necessarily grasping. Say they have a nice cup of tea is not necessarily grasping. But our expectation, our, the sort of usual, our belief, there's something, more than what that thing can give us. That is grasping from the Buddhist understanding. Something unable to let go. It is the causes. We are the product. So you can't blame to the product. We have to look at the causes. So the Buddhist understanding, the causes, why we are here, and what are the causes or the conditions make us be here, right here and now, is delusion and actions. The Buddhist term is called karma. Actions motivated by those delusions. So if this is Buddhist assumption, but I'm not saying that is the reality. I don't know. But if this life, present life, is product of the delusion and the actions motivated by the delusion, then we shouldn't expect something perfect. Because delusions and the actions motivated by delusion, these two are not perfect. If you sow a seed in your garden, which is not perfect seed, you shouldn't expect a perfect vegetables or flowers, because that's how it works externally, and that's the Buddhist understanding. I'll not go to rebirth those things. I want to look at I want you to think modern scientists' point of view. They all agree, that our physical body is product of our parents, and our parents' genes are not perfect, are they? I totally, although I myself do not have, thorough educations on modern evolution, like what you call Darwin and some of those great, the Western scientists and biologists. I haven't had any proper education on those things. But being here for a long time, and I'm very interested on these things, and I've read books and listened the talks by some of those great, the scientists and biologists. I totally agree. I totally agree, according to the presentations, how we end up to here from the beginning. So that although the Buddhist the Buddhism may have different presentations, but it is not completely contradict. From the more these great scholars or the scientists, how they presented evolution. I don't have any difficulty with accepting the modern the concept of evolution. For example, as I put it out earlier, one of the main Buddhist philosophy, Buddha himself said, and later some of the great Buddhist thinkers, they elaborated, is dependent origination. Everything and event come into being dependent on other factors. That is one of the main Buddhist view. So if you look at the explanation about the Western the evolution, this the Darwins and some of those great, they all talk about evolving dependent on the circumstances. For example, they talk about certain birds, maybe the same types of birds, but living in an island where they don't have any threats for their life. Their wings do not function. They don't need that. And that is why they don't need, because in the island they don't have any fear of their life. They don't need to fly. And what they're talking about is dependent on the circumstances. So that is very, very close. Although the Darwins and those the modern those great thinkers, they explain very much from the how through their observation, through the analysis, through the investigation on the physical things. Those great Buddhist thinkers, they may not use those things. They do not have those tools and those things, but they use the more mind itself to think how they function, how they work, how they come into being.